For millennia, stories have been passed down from generation to generation across America's western frontier. Whether it's been oral traditions informing the culture of indigenous tribes, or Spanish mythology that came through Mexico, or European literature that spawned countless campfire stories across the pond, the folklore of the American West is tough to beat. More specifically, stemming from the indigenous oral traditions are the folktales and parables passed down by the Navajo tribes of the American Southwest Territories. Literary works and oral legends are integral parts to the culture of the Navajo and have influenced storytelling both in the United States and around the world at large. These traditions range from creation stories, like the Diné Bahane, to connected lessons featuring frequently seen characters of Navajo myths, such as the Black God and Coyote figures. To celebrate these fascinating pieces of folklore and legendary narratives, we're going to take a deeper dive into a couple of entries into Navajo mythology and the lessons passed on through these parables of diverse voices. Here are two Native American folktales of the Navajo tribe. The first legend is that of the Little Dawn Boy and the Rainbow Trail, a magnificent tale about a child who must trek to the top of a mountain and ask the chief who resides there to bless his family through nature with all the colors of the rainbow. The tale of the Rainbow Trail was popularized in the mainstream literary world in 1917, when it was adapted by Francis Jenkins Olcott in his 64-title collection of children's short stories from around the world. The legend begins in a nondescript land inhabited by indigenous Americans, where a house made of rugged red rock rested on the side of a deep, cavernous canyon. In the house lived Little Dawn Boy, a curious yet courageous youthful spirit who never feared questions or quests. With Little Dawn Boy in the Red Rock house was his entire family, consisting of his father, mother, various brothers, a few sisters, and most importantly, a tall, commanding medicine man, who always seemed larger than life himself. Little Dawn Boy received his name from his morning ritual, in which he would sit on the edge of the canyon and peer to the other side, looking over the land his ancestors had roamed for generations. In the distance and beyond the far side of the canyon was a mountain, colored in a hue of deep purple. Behind the purple mountain was a gargantuan white tower that resembled a cliff, its top camouflaged by the clouds. The mysterious mountain and its white tower always intrigued Little Dawn Boy, who would ask the medicine man each morning who lived on top of the white cliff. The medicine man wasn't ready to give out that information quite yet, however. Instead, he looked down at the boy and told him, he will say who lives in the white tower only when the boy learns his magic songs in exchange. Little Dawn Boy did exactly as he was told, learning the magic songs by heart. After a short time of practice, Little Dawn Boy returned and performed his magic songs, impressing the medicine man. The medicine man then told the boy the person who lives on top of the tower was the great chief of all magic, residing in the House of Evening Light. Inside of the house were 4 rooms, complemented with 4 doors. The first door was guarded by 2 bolts of lightning shining brighter than the sun. The second door was protected by 2 unrelenting bears. The third door was shielded by 2 red-headed serpents, and the fourth by 2 fearsome rattlesnakes consumed by wrath. While Little Dawn Boy remained courageous, he did have a pressing question, wondering how he would reach the top of the tower. The medicine man again came equipped with a reply, telling the boy he needed to bring with him gifts for the great chief, while also leaving behind the magical pollen of dawn on the trail that he leaves behind. Then, at the peak of the Purple Mountain, he must sing the magic songs he practiced to reveal the path forward and upward, right to the House of Evening Light. To prepare, Little Dawn Boy dressed himself in his finest feathers and face paint, gathering his bows and arrows, and making one last appointment with the medicine man. The medicine man then gave him 2 bags, one with the gifts of wampum string and bright blue turquoise, and the other bag with the pollen of dawn, golden dust from foraged larkspur flowers. Afterwards, Little Dawn Boy trekked into the canyon, befriending the wild grasshoppers dancing around him as he made his way through dew-soaked fields. By the morning of the fourth day, Little Don Boy's adventure brought him to the foot of the Purple Mountain. As he looked up, the boy saw the red lightning striking the clouds that covered the summit, awestruck by its power and brilliance. Unafraid, Little Don Boy went forward, being sure to sprinkle the golden pollen as he climbed. He remembered the magic song as well, singing from the depths of his soul. The song went as follows. "Oh, little pollen boy am I, from Red Rock House I come, with pollen of dawn on my trail, with beauty before me, with beauty behind me, with beauty below me, with beauty above me, with beauty all around me, over the rainbow trail I go. Hither I wander, over the beautiful trail I go." As soon as the song was finished, a luminous rainbow saturated with its vibrant colors arose from the top of the Purple Mountain, creating a path straight up to the top of the white cliff. Little Don Boy didn't have to guess what it was. He had finally found the Rainbow Trail. Unable to contain his excitement, the boy ventured across the colorful bridge with haste. Along the way, a shimmering wind filled with a rainbow mist blew through the trail and up towards the House of Evening Light. When Little Don Boy approached the house, he found all 4 doors were no longer inaccessible, as the rainbow mist had blinded all 4 pairs of creatures guarding the 4 passages. Once inside, Little Don Boy discovered a new trail of daylight, over which he spread more golden pollen of dawn and sang the medicine man's magic song. At the song's conclusion, the boy was met with the commanding, hardened voice of the great chief of all magic, who asked what stranger could have possibly arrived in his house, uninvited. The great chief appeared angry and unforgiving, shocked that a mere mortal could complete such a journey. Little Don Boy, of course, did not flinch, instead remembering the gifts in his second bag at his side. He took out the wampum strings and bright blue turquoise, telling the great chief he arrived with offerings and the intention to only make friends, not enemies. When the great chief of all magic saw the gifts, his fierce demeanor dissolved into a pleasant welcoming, smiling at Little Don Boy and inviting him further into the House of Evening Light. As they walked, the great chief asked the boy what he'd like in return. Without hesitation, Little Don Boy turned to his elder and asked for plentiful gifts for his family and fellow tribesmen. He requested offerings stemming from all the colors of the rainbow, and then some, such as yellow and white and blue corn, green plants, gorgeous flowers of the finest fragrances, clouds of black filled with fearsome thunderstorms and radiant lightning, as well as softer clouds, bringing blue spring showers, easygoing summer breezes, and crisp autumn hazes of gold and amber. The great chief of all magic could only crack a bigger smile, proud of Little Don Boy's courage and compassion for his clan. The 2 unlikely friends devoured a fantastic feast, eating and drinking until they were merry, and Little Don Boy could prepare for his adventure back to the far side of the canyon. The boy couldn't leave without one more song, however, and as he stepped out of the House of Evening Light, he looked down from the white tower and sang as follows. "Oh, Little Don Boy am I, from the House of Evening Light. On the trail of evening light, to Red Rock House I return. Held fast in my hands are gifts, with soft rains above me, and sweet flowers below me, with white corn behind me, with green plants before me, with pale mists all around me. Over the rainbow trail I go. Hither I wander, over the beautiful trail I go." As he finished, the rainbow trail once again emerged from the edges of the cliff and descended back down towards the summit of the Purple Mountain. Little Don Boy bid adieu to the great chief and his fortress one final time, before continuing along the bridge. Another 3 days and 3 nights passed on by, until the 4th morning, the boy arrived at the end of the deep canyon just as the sun peaked above the horizon. Little Don Boy entered the Red Rock House and found his family eagerly awaiting his return. They laid out the magical buckskin on the floor for the boy to rest upon, listening to his traveling stories as their eyes gleamed with the gifts from the tower above. Little Don Boy's adventure across the Rainbow Trail became a legend from then on in the lands of the Deep Canyon and beyond. with many a folk singing his famous tune as follows. With soft rains above us, with sweet flowers below us, with white corn behind us, with green plants before us, with pale mists all around us, over the rainbow trail we go. Hither we wander, over the beautiful trail we go. In the heart of Navajo Nation stands an 800 feet high natural structure called Spider Rock, located within Canyon de Chelly National Park, Arizona. The structure has long been heralded for its bizarre visuals and unique formation, of which geologists believe began more than 230 million years ago. They believe it was the result of compressed sand swirling in the canyon winds, the red dust of Arizona's deserts, creating a breathtaking monolith only Mother Nature could concoct. The Navajo people have a much different origin story, however, as Spider Rock has become an important facet in their folklore and cultural history at large. The legend of Spider Rock begins in the early days of the Navajo's population of the lands in America's Southwest, when their ancestors entered the Fourth World from the Third World in their creation. During this era, they lived in the cliffs of the region, constructing caves and various dwellings throughout the canyons. These usually existed above the canyon floor, to avoid the dangers of flash floods and the perils of looming enemies. These enemies came in the form of various monsters and mythological beasts, savage creatures that hunted people like game. One of the deities looking out for the people was Spider Woman, a goddess with supernatural powers and deep love for her humans below. One day, she sought out two humans born of a deity, named Monster Slayer and Child Born of Water. They were given a quest to find their father, Sun God, who was to guide them to their warrior training. After a trying and treacherous journey, the two men found Sun God and asked him to train them in the ways of killing monsters. Sun God obliged, teaching Monster Slayer and Child Born of Water exactly how to destroy the beasts of both land and sea. Ultimately, the training ended and the two empowered warriors were ready to tackle the monsters of the canyons. They returned to Spider-Woman's domain and ended the creature's terror, establishing Spider-Woman as one of the most respected and important deities in Navajo lore. After her victory in protecting the people of the Fourth World, Spider-Woman looked for a home, eventually choosing the sandstone monolith now known as Spider Rock. It was from upon her roost in Spider Rock that Spider-Woman taught the ancestors of modern Navajo how to weave upon a loom, a lesson she learned from her former husband, Spider-Man. Spider-Man was known for crossing the poles of earth and sky, warping the sunray sticks as a wolf cross, and maintaining fibers from rock crystals and sheet lightning. For the batten, he sealed joints with a sun halo, and used a white shell for the comb. This led directly to the heightened weaving culture of the Navajo. Spider-Woman was also the focal point in shaping the behavior of young children. Kids would be told that if their behavior did not improve, Spider-Woman would descend from her web-covered ladder and bring the Navajo children back up with her, where they'd be devoured on top of Spider Rock. To add in a bit of visual proof so that the children wouldn't get any ideas, elders would point to the top of Spider Rock, where white rocks covered its crown. They told the kids that these were sun-bleached bones left behind by Spider-Woman, as warning signs to the children below. Spider-Woman, while used as a tactic to keep children in line, wasn't made out to be one of the horrifying beasts she helped slay. In fact, there were more stories of her protection over the Navajo youth than any others before her. One such story goes that a young Navajo man was trekking through Dead Man's Canyon by his lonesome, hunting for game to bring back to his tribe. While he was canvassing the region, however, an enemy tribesman popped out from behind the brush, chasing the young man deep into Dead Man's Canyon. The young hunter was startled, but not shocked, and turned to run as fast as he'd ever run before. All the while, his eyes darted around the canyon for any sign of escape, like a perch or tunnel he could hide in while his predator gave pursuit. Eventually, the young hunter wound up in front of a massive sandstone monolith, standing at the center of the canyon, none other than Spider Rock itself. Of course, the man's first reaction was one of disappointment. He looked up and down the obelisk tower and felt it wouldn't be possible to climb, as he was too exhausted from running and didn't represent the most expert climber of the tribe. All hope seemed lost until at the last second, a cord of silk dropped down in front of the young hunter's eyes, hanging from the apex of Spider Rock. The man couldn't believe it, but grabbed at the silken cord without hesitation. He pulled on it for a second, testing its strength, and found it strong enough to climb. He then wrapped the end of the cord around his waist, tied it in a knot, and used it to mount the monolith. The enemy tribesmen ran into view, and upon seeing the man's ascension, retreated from the chase once and for all. Meanwhile, back on top of Spider Rock, the young hunter finally reached the summit. He released himself from the silken cord and laid down on a flat sheath of sandstone to rest after his heart-thumping endeavor. As if his fortune couldn't get any better, the young hunter was also greeted with abandoned eagle eggs for food and a small puddle of the night's dew for drink. It was almost as if someone, or something, was looking out after the man. It didn't take long for the hunter's guardian angel to reveal herself as none other than Spider-Woman. She said she had witnessed the hunter's chase and knew he'd wander near her roost, spinning a fortified rope of her finest silk to anchor to a rock and drop down to his rescue. The young man couldn't be more thankful and told the Spider-Woman tenfold how much he appreciated her saving grace. After he recovered from his close call, he descended Spider Rock on the magical silken cord one more time, before venturing back home through Dead Man's Canyon. Back at the caves of Canyon de Chelly, the hunter shared his experiences to the rest of his Navajo community. He proclaimed to have been saved by Spider-Woman, and Spider Rock would be considered sacred ground henceforth. For generations, those who came after the young hunter would know of the deity's absolute protection over the land and the land's young kin, her spirit and her home, real Navajo legends.